Good afternoon, everyone. I am Earl Butch Graves Jr., the President and CEO of Black Enterprise. It's my privilege to welcome you to the Pivot to Tech Sales webinar hosted by our friends at Salesforce. I've been looking forward to this event today because the tech space is booming with opportunities, and this webinar represents a great way for us to explore what a career path in tech sales might look like for you. Salesforce is on the path to create a workplace that reflects society, and I'm excited to announce that today's event is the beginning of our new partnership. Through this partnership, we will work closely to create and deliver valuable resources, more inspiring events like this one, and networking opportunities for our community to pursue and develop careers in technology. To put it simply, both Black Enterprise and Salesforce share the belief that representation matters. Let's take a quick look at a video that shows the undeniable power of representation in the workplace and beyond.
We are missing. We are missing from so many rooms, classrooms, boardrooms, everything in between. But we are here. We are programmers and coders, animators and analysts, engineers and entrepreneurs, designers, builders, creators, the bringers of change. We are here. We are here leading. We are here innovating. We are here working for our vision of better companies, communities, and countries. We are here. We have always been here. Our stories, our voices, our ideas have always mattered, more than mattered. And we won't stop asking more of the spaces that need to make space for more like us. All of us, all different types of us.
As you can see, our purpose for today's Pivot to Tech Sales webinar and our partnership with Salesforce is clear. We want you to have every opportunity to pivot successfully into the tech industry and into tech sales careers in particular. We encourage you to connect with each other and with today's panelists. We're here to learn and network. So let's get started with our greatly anticipated conversation with a bona fide star and proven leader in tech and marketing, who is the quintessential example of making graceful career pivots while maintaining a standard of performance excellence. Of course, I'm speaking of Netflix Chief Marketing Officer, Bozoma St. John. Bozoma previously held a similar role at Endeavor, after serving as the first ever Chief Brand Officer at Uber. Her 20-year marketing career also includes executive marketing positions at both Apple Music and Pepsi-Cola North America. Of course, Bozoma is well known and highly respected by the Black Enterprise audience, including attendees of our annual Women of Power Summit, during which she was recognized as one of the most powerful women in business in 2017. There's much more to share, but the best person to tell the story is the person who is living it. So without further delay, please join me in welcoming the one and only Bozoma St. John. Welcome,
Thank
Bozoma.
you so much. I appreciate it, Butch. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be virtually
Absolutely.
in your office.
Boz, your story is unique, but I don't want to give anyone the opportunity to try to fill in for themselves. But I would love for you to be able to share with everyone, because many people know that you're don't know perhaps that you were born in the U.S., moved to Ghana at 6 months, and then came back, if you will, at age 12 to Colorado of all places. But would love for, and have talked many times Both you've been on the cover of Black Enterprise and talked at a Women of Power Summit and other things, but talked about how your father was your inspiration. But if you could give us a few minutes on your background, and how you got to even going into marketing in the first place and pursuing your dreams here in the US.
Oh, wow. Well, first, I do want to thank you so much for having me. I consider Black Enterprise to be home. I'm actually, if anybody asks you, I'd be shocked that I find Black Enterprise to be home, because I so aspired to be in the pages of Black Enterprise. And when I was put on the cover a few years ago, it blew my mind. I mean, I also blew up the cover, by the way, and have it printed. So just so you know. But yeah, my beginnings probably would not predict that I would be here in this seat right now. I think, like many of us, we have dreams and aspirations, but the likelihood that we make it into these roles is so slim that it feels like an impossible dream. It doesn't keep us from dreaming it, but the reality of it feels unreachable. And so I am quite still in awe of the journey that has brought me here. As you mentioned, my parents are both from Ghana. They are immigrants to the United States of America. And as such, we're very much determined to have me and my three younger sisters live the American dream. Moving to Colorado Springs, Colorado is pretty much like any other immigrant story. They had some friends who lived in a tiny town who said, it's safe here, you can raise your family here, the jobs are good, and you'll be happy. And so they moved without much knowledge of what Colorado Springs, Colorado was going to offer. What I found, Butch, was that it was nothing like where I'd come from. In fact, nothing like anywhere I'd ever been before. And my family had moved around a lot when I was a kid. But ending up in Colorado Springs, Colorado at 12 was at the moment where, all of us have been 12. All of us know what that feels like. You're probably lanky. You haven't grown into your ears yet. You're a little unsure of yourself. I was all of those things. And what really determined for me what then would become the pathway to this career, which of course I did not know at the time, was that I had to connect with my classmates, with my neighbors, with the people at church by any means necessary. Meaning that I had to find ways to connect with them that had nothing to do with my skin color or the language I spoke at home, the foods we ate, my accent, or any other cultural nuances they found weird. The thing that I needed to find was the connection points, the things that would make us similar, and so that meant everything in pop culture. So what was the hottest movie? What was the hottest song? Who's the hottest sports athlete? What were the films that people were watching? Like all of those types of details were what I need to understand in order to connect to people. Now, of course, that did not protect me from any of the questions that came, about who I am or what I do or what I eat at home. All of those questions came. And as you can imagine, at 12 and 13, I got teased pretty much constantly for all of those things. My dark skin, the foods I ate, the accent with which I talked with. The most incredible thing to me, though, at that time, and this is, I think, unique in that my mother was highly influential in making sure that I did not assimilate. Now, I know that's different for a lot of immigrants who come to the US wanting to blend in, right? Because there's danger in not doing that. My mother refused. We had weird names, right, that people couldn't pronounce. And she refused to allow us any kind of, sideways nickname that didn't sound anything like our names. She wouldn't let it. And for me, that, of course, like in retrospect and in hindsight, meant that I had the upbringing, which told me that what I have to offer is special. It is unique. It is valid. It is not something to be hidden or assimilated. And so it is why I'm able to walk into rooms as I do today and know that I don't need to adjust to anybody else's standard, that what I have to offer is equally as important, that just because you've been here longer doesn't mean that I don't have a point of view and that it shouldn't be heard. And for me, it was freeing. It meant that I had the opportunity to be able to really express myself in a way that I don't think most people have the opportunity to, especially at that age. But it was really that, need to connect to my classmates and understand what was happening in pop culture that drove me to have to find the connections. And it is absolutely what I do today.
Yeah. I mean, your parents obviously put a tremendous amount of pride in recognizing who you are. So your parents reinforced, and I identify with this wholly because my parents were, 100%. Listen, you have every bit as much as anybody else does, and you're beautiful as you are, right? So that having your parents continue to reinforce that helps you to transition. You went from obviously Colorado Springs, and you went to the Northeast now to go to school, and then ultimately going into a career in the Northeast. But that must have been quite an adjustment as well, going from Ghana to Colorado Springs and then ultimately to Wesleyan in Connecticut for college. How was your college experience, and then what led you to leave when you left college to want to go into marketing? What was the marketing and sales? What was the key thing that moved you in that direction?
Yeah. Well, my experience at Wesleyan was actually quite pivotal also for a number of reasons. When I was in high school, I was really good at science and math. And again, as a child of African immigrants, it's like you only have a few options of a career to choose from, right? And I'm sure you've heard it before. It's like you're going to be a doctor, a lawyer, or an engineer. Those are the three things. And maybe you could be a teacher. You know what I mean? Like those were the options. And so I decided I was going to be a doctor because I was good at science and it was fine. And so I went to college as a pre-med major and or a pre-med concentration in chem. And I loved it. It was fine. There was nothing wrong with it. But I found that the arts was what actually made me tick. That the classes that I took that were about literature, going to the plays on campus. By the way, Lin-Manuel Miranda and I went to Wesleyan together. He was a couple of years younger than I am. But it's like it was a very rich artistic school, which did not shun the sciences or the math at all. I mean, people were allowed to have both. But it was where I found my blossoming for understanding that the arts were as important as the sciences, and that could be an option. And so I double majored, English and African American studies becoming additional majors. And that African American studies major is another pivotal point for me. When I got to Wesleyan, I had not yet experienced had not yet identified my African Americanness. In Colorado Springs, I was clearly African. It was like, oh, there goes the African girl. You know what I mean? In college, I had a different identity. And I found that to be so remarkable because my world opened up. And so when I was graduating from Wesleyan, I decided to take a year before I went to med school and moved to New York, sort of on a whim. But this is where it's like fate and destiny and everything, sort of matches up, right? Because I was so ingrained in the literature of the African American experience, I was really attracted to also filmmakers and other creators in the space, including Spike Lee. And so when I got the call from my temp agency that Spike had fired his assistant and needed somebody to answer the phones at his advertising agency, I jumped. I don't even think jump is the right word. Like I sprinted, I ran to the office, ran right in and just threw myself down and said, oh, whatever you need me to do, Mr. Lee, I'm here to do it. And he took one look at me and was just like, can you just answer the phones? And from there, I was really intrigued by, him as a writer also. One of his favorite stories to tell about me these days, because we are still very good friends, is that on literally my first day, I saw him carrying what I didn't know was the screenplay for Bamboozled. And I asked him if I could read it, of course, in my naivete, right? So he gives me the screenplay in a little bit of like, I would call it like, the arrogance that Spike carries, like, here she goes, she's not going to be able to read this whole thing. And I got it back to him in 3 days. But here's the thing, Butch, I didn't just get back to him in 3 days. I made markings on it. I corrected grammar. I asked questions about character development and all of that, which of course offended him to no end. It's like, if anybody knows Spike, you know that you don't give him feedback like that. And especially not a 22-year-old who is like wet behind the ears and hasn't experienced anything in life. He definitely wasn't looking for any comments that I had. But I think what attracted him was the fact that I had some spunk, and obviously some good ideas that were yet to be found. But he definitely saw the vision, and it was what opened up the whole world of advertising and marketing to me, and storytelling. To be under the tutelage of someone like him at such a time when I was, young and impressionable, and just trying to discover what my calling was. It was really important to be with someone who clearly understands his own voice. This is not just the voice of a community, but his own voice, and then how to express it in a way that brings light and shines light on an experience that sometimes is shunned. It was an unbelievable experience. And I certainly have been very much influenced by that experience, and that the storytelling I do now, from the seats in which I occupy in marketing, mean that I don't deny, our collective experience, that I don't think it is not worthy of being mainstream, or that I should dumb it down for anybody's consumption, because Spike certainly didn't, and he still hasn't.
Right. The intersection of sales and marketing, because that's important. Talk a little bit about how does one get into a position, because what you've always gone after and assumed line positions. And to be clear, and that's not to knock non-line positions or not, but you said, hey, you quickly recognize these are the positions where people are chosen from to move forward. These are the positions that make a difference along the way. It would be helpful to share a little bit about how does a young person navigate that's either coming out of college or is in mid-career, and say, hey, I got to get myself in a position to be seen, to be in the room, to be seen, or to be heard. Talk a little bit about how does strategies, if you would, some words of advice or strategies on how to put yourself in a position to be seen and to be recognized, if you follow what I mean.
Yeah. Oh, gosh, there's so many ways to answer that question. It is such a complicated one, because there are a few ways to approach it, right? By the way, I've tried a few of them myself, and some of them have worked and some have not. So I won't pretend as if this is the end all be all, but of course I will share what I have learned. Very early on, so after my experience with Spike, I decided to leave his agency and go to what I would call traditional advertising agency, because I was under the assumption, probably advised, that diversifying my experiences, and diversifying means the other way around, not just being, Black or of color, but diversifying mean that, oh, you've got to get out of the Black space. You have to, get into general population, whatever that means, in order to showcase the fact that you have the ability to storytell from more than one perspective. I took that advice, Butch, because the truth of the matter is that we can show our dimensions in more than one way, and that experience is not the only one. I would much rather that young people, or people who are starting out in their careers, go after their passion, because that's where you then put in all the effort. That's where all of your creative ideas come to bear. The solutions that you want to make, the late nights that you have to stay up for, the things that will drive you to find the innovation in the job can only be done if you're truly passionate about it. This is not a phone it in type of situation. This is not just a time card type of experience. It's not like you're watching the clock thinking, well, when do I leave? No, this is the type of stuff that like you can't stop thinking about. The kind of projects and the kind of job and the kind of relationships that you want to build over time. And so finding that early and finding that immediately. And by the way, it doesn't mean that you have to be right early on. It just means that when you're wrong, like they say, fail fast. You're in it, you try it, it's not working, leave. Go to the next thing. And I think in this day and age, which is probably different from when I started, is that there was this well, it kind of still follows me now, but there was this thought that if you jumped around too much, it would be bad for your career, right? That if you, especially early on, if you look like you only spend, a year here, 18 months there, 24 months there, that you would look unstable and therefore no one would hire you. I think I'm living proof that that is not true. So I would recommend that instead of trying to find tenure and longevity, that you actually find passion. It is the experience that is going to make the purest difference. The other thing that I have found is that because you're following your passion and because you're trying to get into roles, or let's just even say companies or industries that you're most interested in, you'll find that volunteering for the extracurricular or the extra credit projects comes much easier because you actually want to do it. I found myself countless times in the role of being, like my CMO's person to go to when there was a special project. It's like, oh, we don't really have the time or the people to work on this thing. Hey, Bose, do you think you want to take a crack at it? Yes, every time, yes. Because what happened is that I became the person who they knew could get it done, in addition to my regular duties. And I did it happily because most of the time those projects were things that, really were near and dear to my heart. Right. In fact, one quick story about that, Butch, was that when I was at PepsiCo very early on, I was working on Mountain Dew, the brand, and the CMO at the time, C. Nicholson, who was tremendous. I was certainly that person to her, that she would call and say, hey, what do you think about this? Or what do you think about that? And I give her my opinion and she'd thank me and then that'd be it, right? Or sometimes she'd assign me something that was a side project. Well, in this particular case, there was a nasty rumor going around about Mountain Dew and we were losing sales very quickly. A competitor had launched what we'd call an urban legend or urban myth about yellow dye number 5. We won't talk about what that myth was, but it meant that sales were tanking. And the project she wanted me to figure out was whether or not we could find a new target, a new demo for the brand. I think you remember that early on, Mountain Dew was the brand that we affectionately called the one for the crazy white boys, the ones who jumped off roofs and did dangerous things. And it was like, why are we even doing that? I don't understand. And my job became trying to figure out if there were other demographics that could identify with the brand. Well, one of my passions, of course, living in New York and living in Harlem, was to go up to Rucker Park, during the summer and watch street ball. And at the time, And One was the team to watch. When they'd come into town, they'd have their tour. You'd absolutely go and watch them. And so the info that I gave to C and the projects I worked on for one whole summer, I'm talking about like every night I would go to the parks, whether they were uptown in the Bronx or in Brooklyn or in Harlem, to watch basketball games and look at the crowd and understand what they were doing and why they were doing it, and finding out that there were no brands who were up there really, with any support, meant that I was able to give a leg up, to Mountain Dew, to be able to be one of the first to go in and give real brand sponsorship to a league that had not yet been recognized by any major brands. And that was one of the projects that launched, at least for me, legitimacy in how we look at how even as African Americans, our culture could impact business in a way that is real. This is not a myth. This is not for just D&I purposes, but that it is a real thing. And that was driven by my passion. So if there's any advice, it's that, find your passion and find it quickly and fail fast.
No question. So you've had, a tremendous career and rise through a variety of positions. And I'm not going to take everyone through all of that, but from PepsiCo to Apple to where you were the marketing executive at PepsiCo and huge position at Apple and Apple Music, came in with Beats, and then you People were like, oh my God, that must be the dream job of all. And then they looked up and they go, no, I'm going to be the chief brand officer at Uber. And they were like, why would she ever, people are, why would she want to ever leave Apple? I mean, you've got to be crazy. You never leave Apple. And you're a brand officer at Uber, and people are like, oh, she's leaving to become a chief marketing officer at Endeavor. And they were like, Endeavor? But Uber, everyone knows what Uber is. And then lo and behold, this opportunity comes for you in terms of being the chief marketing officer at Netflix, which is, and people forget that 10 years ago, people didn't even know what Netflix was, right? So love to get a little bit of background on, hey, what led to, because this is, the $64,000 question. One, what I think people miss on this is you were offered these opportunities, right? So it's not like you weren't offered the opportunities. That people should, we should be proud of the fact that you were even offered the opportunities, because oftentimes these same type of opportunities have been reserved for white males. Mm. How do you navigate that? I mean, how do you, because you're not only often the only time, probably the only person of color in the room, in the C-suite. How do you maintain your authenticity of who you are, while at the same time providing the discipline, the absolute information and this necessary to move these companies forward to be wildly successful? Because every one of these companies you've been at has been very successful, right?
Yeah.
So
this is one that is not a straight line. Some of it I certainly feel came from my early days, as I talked about, feeling that the feeling that my mother gave me, about not assimilating, not feeling like I ever had to, and knowing that my position, my experiences, my language, my music, my culture, my dance, all of the things, my fashion, are all necessary, that they are not to be dumbed down. And I think that actually lies in the way that I move, in the workplace, that the way that I am sitting here with you now is the way I sit in every boardroom. The way that I speak right now, the stories that I tell, the ways that I gesture, are the ways in which I behave in a boardroom. I don't temper down my Blackness or my womanness or any of the other nesses, that they all come with me. And I believe it makes me a better executive. Makes me more in tune to not just what is happening in my world, but in the world around me, because I understand what it's like not to be talked to. I understand what it's like to be ignored. And what you find is that in most companies, even the big ones, that when you start talking to mass consumers in ways that are all flat, as if you talk to people all equally, that's when brands start to fail. You need nuance. You need a little bit of complexity. You need to talk to people in the manner in which they're used to speaking in order to really connect with them. And I find that my own experiences and my own journey have actually prepared me very much for that. And so that's why when, as at Apple, and we're beginning to create Apple Music, the thought about creating, campaigns that would just touch everybody at the same time didn't make any sense. It's like, if we're going to talk about hip hop, and let's talk about hip hop. If we're going to talk about Afrobeats, let's talk about Afrobeats. If we're going to talk classical. It's not as if you need to like blend it all together in order for people to all align. Music and food, soda is not sold that way. It needs to be sold in a way that can connect to all of us. And so, as I progress in my career, one thing that has always been consistent for me is knowing that I had to put myself in the work. That I had to reflect myself in the work. And while that might sound counterintuitive, because again, most of us who go into business know that we have to talk to mass consumers, but I believe the best way to connect to people is by showing yourself. I'll use this analogy. It's like, if you've ever been to a cocktail party where you talk to a person, and we've all met this person before, the one who you say, oh, I grew up in Philly, and they're like, really? So did I. You're like, oh, really? Huh, okay. My favorite fruit is strawberries. And they're like, yes, I love strawberries too. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, well, my favorite color is pink. And they're like, same. Like those people are not the people you want to hang out with. Those people are the ones that you look at and you're like, okay, you back away slowly, hoping they don't make any fast moves. You know, the
Right.
people you want to talk to are the ones who have a story, the ones who have a little bit of nuance, the ones who have something interesting to say. It is the same in every boardroom. It is the same in every conversation. It's the same in every piece of work. That when we connect to people, they want to understand the stories and the complexities of a certain person. They'll connect if they feel like there's something that they can connect to. They feel like there's something interesting. And it's the same way that I connect in interpersonal conversations and the same way that I connect in my work. I think it's very necessary actually to show up in the work. And so, yeah, having been in positions in which I've been sought out for the role, I feel is a testament to the fact that I don't shrink. I don't try to go into the wallpaper and blend in. I mean, speaking of wallpaper, it's like I got Black women on my wall. You know, I don't play around. I'm here representing all of the time. And so, to me, it's a really important note to make that for us, as we're dealing with all kinds of challenges and issues in society and culture, it is that much more important that we show up in the work. It's that much more important that we show our full, true selves in these environments, because it's actually how we're going to stand out. You know, I've always balked at the idea that in order to succeed, I had to blend in, as if, you know, the caricature that was made for success is somehow drawn with me in mind. It was never drawn with me in mind. No one ever said that. No one ever said that, like, you know, the CMO of, you know, public companies should look like me. No one ever said that. You know, I was advised the other way, right? It's like, oh, you probably want to tame down your hair. You might not want to have long nails. Don't wear that red lipstick, and definitely don't bring any Blackness into it. You know, you just want to go along. Well, that's never been a way to succeed, because who wants that? That sounds so boring. You know, and I recognize that it's a danger. It's not as if I've been without my criticism. There have been many critics along the way. You know, people who have always said I'm too much of this or too much of that. My opinions are too strong. My opinions are too loud, along with my fashion choices. But the truth of the matter is that I think there's only one way to actually contribute. And that's the way to put yourself in the work and to be loud about it, because it's the only way to make sure that you're actually noticed for what you do.
What is also unique and interesting is you're being in a C-suite or being a chief marketing officer puts you in sort of an isolated position anyway, regardless of what your background would be, whether you're Black, white, or whatever. But you're a Black female, a Black woman in the C-suite, but you're also in the tech industry, right? And which is even further isolation. And, you know, so people who are in the tech industry are looking for any example of anyone that they can identify with in some way, shape, or form. And so you're not only having to explain it just to corporate America, you explain it to a sector of corporate America that does not enjoy, I should say, the best reputation for being open to inclusiveness. But the fact that they have tapped you to be the chief marketing officer says a lot. I don't know if it says a lot about them, or more so it says more about you, I think. It does say about them, frankly. Your success has been testimony to hard work, testimony to you remaining authentic, testimony to being creative. You have had a great career. I know that you have other ambitions and other things, and so be not be dissuaded of your ambition, of your goals, of what you want to do, and know that you will always have the support of us at Black Enterprise and African American brothers and sisters across this world.
Thank you so much, Butch.
Absolutely. Listen, God bless you. Continue to walk in harm's way and make a name, take names, and move forward.
I certainly will. Thank you so much.
Okay, God bless. Talk to you
Bye.
soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, Butch and Bozema, for such an engaging and important conversation. I'm Elisa Gums, the Executive Managing Editor of Black Enterprise, and I'm so excited for this next part of our event because you're going to hear directly from people who know firsthand how fulfilling and successful a career in tech sales can be. We're joined by two members of the Salesforce team, Reggie Marble, the Area Vice President of Enterprise Corporate Sales, and Shantae Baker, a Regional Vice President of Sales. No one can represent them better than they can themselves, so I'm going to ask each of you to share what exactly you do in your roles. Shantae, you want to start us off?
Yes, thanks so much, Elisa. I want to start by just giving sheer gratitude. I'm so thankful and grateful to be able to be here today, and really grateful to the Salesforce team as well as the Black Enterprise team for allowing me to participate in this. As you mentioned, my name is Shantae Baker. I've been at Salesforce for just over 6 years now, and I lead a team of 8 account executives based primarily in the New York City and New Jersey area, though I'm not there right now, unfortunately, due to COVID. But we sell exclusively and work with companies, exclusively, I should say, in the manufacturing and distribution vertical. So again, so excited to be a part of this. Thank you. Looking forward to the conversation.
Reggie.
Awesome. So I am super honored to be here. So my parents, when I was growing up, my parents read, they still do. They read Black Enterprise. I remember the magazines would come to the house. I would study them. I'd read them. And not only did I have the Jet Beauties up on the wall, I would study like the superstar leaders that were in Black Enterprise. And one of my goals still to this day is to be in Black Enterprise. So that's still a goal. But I'm honored to be on this call because I can say I was part of Black Enterprise now. So my title is Area Vice President of Enterprise Sales. So I run a nationwide sales organization that calls on our top enterprise companies in the North America region. So I'm super honored to be here. Been with Salesforce for 4 years, and look forward to this awesome conversation today.
You took it all the way back with the Jet Beauties, so I know we're going to be on the right track. Today is all about pivoting to tech sales, but before we can pivot anywhere, we have to decide on a direction. Reggie, can you share what your professional journey has looked like and how you zeroed in on this being the right path for you?
It's a great question, Lisa, because I stumbled in. If you would have told me 10 years ago or when I graduated from college that I would be in tech sales, I would have laughed at you. I went to Morehouse College, which in my humble opinion, Morehouse College is the greatest school in the world for Black men. So anyone that has a kid, a young man, please send them to Morehouse College. But I went to Morehouse and I wanted to be a doctor because I watched the Cosby Show and I wanted to be like the Huxtable family. And I realized I didn't like the sight of human blood, so I couldn't be a doctor. And I went to Morehouse Small School. I wanted to play professional football, so I played football in Canada for a year. Quickly realized I was never going to make it to the NFL and I needed to get a real job. So I started my career in customer service at Sprint in the telecom industry. And I climbed my way all up to an executive level role running Sprint's global sales organization. I left that and I became a CRO of a mid-sized media company. And that was a horrendous career choice for me. And I essentially got fired. It was my first really big executive role. So I found myself unemployed. This was 4 years ago. I was a bartender for the summer. And I had to kind of reflect about what I wanted to accomplish in corporate America. And I had to realize that I needed to reinvent myself and I needed to approach my next career move with humility. And I wrote down 4 names of companies that I wanted to be a part of: Salesforce, Amazon, Google, and Apple. And I just went through my LinkedIn profile and I found some contacts that I had that were friends that referred me into Salesforce. And I came into Salesforce as a frontline sales leader. And over a 4-month period, I've been promoted 4 times. I'm now running a very large enterprise sales organization. And the reason I tell you that story is that anyone can get into tech sales. If you're willing to approach this with a beginner's mind, you're willing to hustle, you're willing to reinvent yourself, you're willing to be a student of the game, anyone can be in this industry. Tech sales is a phenomenal place to be. Tech influences everything that we do, live, work, and play. And it's also very, very lucrative. So I would encourage everyone to, if you're interested in tech sales, leverage your network and just find your pathway in.
That's an amazing story. I mean, talk about peaks and valleys and finding your way. As you were on the path of reinventing yourself, did you seek out any external guidance to help guide your career direction?
Absolutely. So I have my own, what I call my own board of directors. And this is a collection of mentors and sponsors that I can go to for career advice, for guidance. And I would say some mentors that I have in my life are my wife. I have 2 kids. I have a 15-year-old daughter who's the smartest kid in the world, and I have a 12-year-old son. I consider them mentors. I have senior execs at other companies that are mentors. And at Salesforce, I have sponsors. A sponsor, in my humble opinion, is different from a mentor. A sponsor is someone that can vouch for you and help you advance your career. And they're willing to put their reputation on the line to make sure that you get exposure, that you get access to important roles. So I would encourage everyone to build a network of your own board of directors that include a combination of mentors to provide you confidential advice and also sponsors.
Shantae, I see you nodding your head to that. Before I have some questions for you, did you have, something to mention about mentors, sponsors, or the like?
Yeah, I mean, I anticipate probably touching on it later, but I can't emphasize, I don't think enough, the importance of finding someone who's doing the job that you want, and really letting that kind of guide you, and surrounding yourself with people also that'll give you that truth serum, right? Like, not people who are telling you what you want to hear, but people who are really going to tell you what it's like and what you need to do to get there. So I absolutely second that in Reggie's response. It is of utmost importance.
So Reggie went through telecom, then media before coming to tech sales. Shantae, you also worked in a completely different industry before you came to Salesforce. How did you decide, as you were making your transition, whether or not the skills you had would serve you well in tech sales?
Yeah, that is a great question. And I think in referencing the comment we just talked about around building sponsorship and mentorship, like, my first step was connecting to people who were already doing the job. And I want to start with this. Everyone has skills that they leverage every day that are transferable to sales. The reason most people, I'd say, think that they don't is because, particularly when we're talking about technology sales, the first piece is that technology is hard and it's challenging, or that you have to be a geek in order to do it, which there's nothing wrong with that. There's no harm in being a smart person. I would want to be a geek any day. You can call me that. But also that sales in general kind of tends to get a bad rap. Most people, when they think of sales, think of a used car salesman, and that's not what it is at all. So for me, I actually had a close friend who was in technology sales and would kind of nudge me on the side. I grew up in the Bay Area and went to college at UC Davis. I was an athlete as well. I ran track in college. So I was pretty competitive, and she had always kind of nudged me to get into sales. I started my career as a clinical research coordinator before I even got into medical sales. And when I was in that role, I actually pitched the head physician at the clinic I was working at on ways that I felt that we could acquire more research funding. I knew that was his passion. I knew that was something that he wanted, and he wanted more time, and the money was going to give him time to do what he wanted to do. Now, in order to do these things, I had to go develop some relationships with pharmaceutical and medical device companies, particularly because they tend to provide the most funding. Now, that also came with a set of requirements. I had to recruit patients, I had to qualify and enroll patients, and while I didn't have an official quota, I did have to meet specific enrollment requirements for pharma and medical device sponsored studies. And so if I didn't hit those numbers, we were going to lose out on future opportunities. And that is sales, right? I was prospecting, I was qualifying, I was working through the process and executing. But overall, I was bringing value to an organization. I was driving efficiency, and I was finding this clinic more revenue. And that's exactly what sales is. So, if you love to learn, are finding and solving problems in what you're doing now, love telling stories, good at driving efficiency, and like to communicate or are a good communicator, you have the skills to be successful in a tech sales role, in my opinion.
Reggie, what were some of the transferable skills you felt like you brought into the role?
I think sales is pretty simple. It comes down to a few things. It comes down to intellectual curiosity. It comes down to hustle, work ethic, grit, passion, energy. And most importantly, I call it the it factor. I call it corporate swag, the ability to get busy, interested people to give you 30 minutes of their time that they don't have. Mm-hmm. And I think those skill sets, whether you're selling technology, you're selling cars, you're selling water, those skills are transferable across any industry. So if you have intellectual curiosity, passion, grit, hustle, and you become a student of the game, you can make a career in the tech sales.
Yep. Shantae, do you have any tips on how people can position those skills that they may already have in one career when they're looking to make this transition?
Yes. So I think the key to technology is that it is always evolving, right? You're constantly learning. Technology changes pretty quickly. So I would say, overall, in addition to, or actually this aligns with Reggie's first point about being really curious. You've also got to be ready and willing to dive in and learn a lot. And that kind of has to be driven by you, right? Everybody else is also moving at 100 miles per hour. But I would say the first step is really understanding what your skills gaps are, and then finding a good mentor that can deliver the truth, as I mentioned before, right? That's really going to help you understand what's the gap between where I am now and where I need to be. And then start training up, right? So once you identify that skill gap, it's making small changes little by little that amount to a larger goal over time, that can lend you the ability to, get where you want to go, maybe faster than you thought.
And if there are professionals out there who recognize that they've got a skills gap and they need to level up some of their skills, are there any resources you guys would recommend?
Yeah, so for Salesforce specifically, we've got Trailhead, right? Trailhead is our public learning platform where you can go in and learn a ton about Salesforce. I personally think one of the best ways to learn, and this is in conjunction with what Zoma was speaking about connecting, is asking people who are already doing it, right? I think they can probably give you a more realistic answer. There's always courses you can take, but there's a ton of free resources on the internet. Salesforce's Trailhead is one in particular that we leverage. I leverage that internally, but also don't forget about the power of LinkedIn and personal connection and just talking to as many people as you can. I think that is immensely helpful.
We're going to start taking some questions from the audience. So for everyone out there watching, please make sure to put your questions for Reggie and Shantae in the chat box if you're watching on blackenterprise.com, or to leave them in the comments if you're joining us on Facebook Live or LinkedIn Live. Our first question, which is for both Reggie and Shantae, is how receptive have you found the tech industry to be to sales experience from other fields?
Shantae, I can take a first stab at that one. So what I would say is, at least I can speak for Salesforce. I can't speak for other tech companies, but we have an incredible leader named Tony Profit who is over our global recruiting. He's also our chief equality officer. And one of the things that Salesforce is doing is we are looking to add more people of color to our company, and specifically our sales organization. And what we are not doing anymore is just going to the same old companies to get people like Microsoft, Oracle. We're broadening the net and we're looking for talent. So if you have demonstrated sales, B2B sales skills, whether you're in a different industry, Salesforce would love to have a conversation with you about making a transition into our company. Once again, it goes back to those characteristics that I said: intellectual curiosity, hustle, grit, the ability to galvanize resources and build a point of view and sell into big companies and small companies. That's what we're looking for. We're looking for talent. So I think if you have the proven track record of success in sales, and you're not in the tech industry, Salesforce would love to have a conversation with you and see if there's an opportunity for you to fit at our company. But once again, I can't speak for other sales companies, but I can speak for what Salesforce is doing. And back to Shantae's point, one of the things that I would encourage you to do if you're interested in making a leap into Salesforce is to reach out to me. I'm happy to have a conversation with you or connect you with someone in my network at Salesforce that can help you prep and get ready for a conversation with the recruiters or the hiring sales managers. But it's a long way of saying, don't let the fact that you're not in tech sales prevent you from getting a job in tech sales.
That's great to know.
Can I just add, on my team right now, I don't think that anybody on my team had software selling experience prior to joining Salesforce. So I would say one other thing is when I'm going through interviews, I'm often looking more for your thought process. Like, how do you think about running a deal cycle? That to me is far more impactful than looking at numbers. There are a bunch of nuances that go with numbers. And I think we all, if you've been in sales for a while, you understand that. So it's about what kind of process do you follow that has allowed you to be successful? And what kind of, specifically, what kind of repeatable process have you put in place that will allow you to be successful in sales in general, not just in the role you're doing now?
Okay.
Yeah,
So
and I'll say on that, I'm a living testament. I didn't come from the tech industry. I came from telecom.
Yeah, me neither. I was selling medical devices.
And you both have made successful transitions.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So our next question is, what does enablement look like when you join the sales team at Salesforce? Shantae, do you want to take that one? You're nodding already.
Yeah, sure. So we have a very intensive enablement process. There are a few kind of things that I would consider almost semi-housekeeping items that in the first few weeks you kind of just need to get through. You do have a program of trails that need to be taken, but that always, and from a sales perspective, goes in conjunction with kind of learning on the spot. So your first month is very much getting settled in. We do have a really kind of, like I said, a formal process that we kind of guide our teams through. But you also have shadowing opportunities and a ton of one-on-one time with your manager to help you get up and running. The one thing that I will say as far as enablement goes is, and I learned this as an AE when I first started selling to startups, you can read all of the material, you can know the products back and forth. The best thing to do is jump in, start talking to your customers. That's the fastest way to learn the value that we bring to them, and to get you ramped pretty quickly. Reggie, what would you say?
Yeah, Salesforce is an incredible enablement company. So once again, which is why I always pivot back to, if you have a proven track record that you can be successful in sales, Salesforce will teach you the products, will teach you our sales process. What we can't teach is energy, passion, and talent. So we do an incredible job of enabling our account executives once they join the company. And then there's continuing education that myself, like, for example, we're getting ready to kick off our new fiscal year, and we all have to get certified on our new corporate messaging, and we have to all do stand and deliver. So I've got to go present to my boss, what is our new sales process? What is our new talk track that we're going to go out and deliver to clients?
So Reggie, you just mentioned about having a proven track record in sales, which is a great segue to our next question, because it's, if you don't have a track record in sales, but you do have a record in leadership, is the best option when you're coming in to try to come in as a business development rep or to start as an AE?
That's a great question. I'm going to ask, I wish I could ask the person a follow-up question to make sure I understand what they're asking, but if they have sales leadership experience in a different industry, then I would say Sales leadership skills are transferable to Salesforce. Once again, you just need to learn the products and the sales process. Now, if you're in leadership and you don't have any sales skills and you want to get into sales leadership, in my humble opinion, and I would love to hear Shantae's perspective, I think you should start as an AE, learn how to sell at Salesforce for a year or two, and then move into leadership.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I don't necessarily know that it needs to be business development rep. I think that kind of depends on like the number of years that you've been in your role and prior experience. But I would say I do think it's beneficial to start in a role where you get a lot of at-bats and start to get used to the sales process so that it becomes a bit more muscle memory. And then the other thing is, and let the team know that you're aspiring to be a sales leader at the company. I think that's one thing that happens often is people come in a role and they aren't explicit about where they're trying to go, and then get a little frustrated about, oh, well, I wanted to do this, and it's because no one knew. So I would say coming in as an AE is fine. Get some volume of deals under your belt, and then make sure that people know what your desired next step is, what you're gunning for.
So you both mentioned earlier some of the characteristics that you thought made a great salesperson. And Reggie mentioned the energy and the swag. The next question is sales more suited for extroverts? And I guess as a follow-up to that, what are some of the common weekly tasks as a sales rep so that people can see if sales is right for them?
Hey, Shantae, well, I'll take the extrovert. Why don't you take the sales task?
Yeah. I want to answer the extrovert question too, but I want to hear what
both of you. We're not to hear what you both think.
We're gonna fighting over the questions. Go ahead.
I will say this: I am an extrovert. All right, I am an extrovert. Like I feel like I'm the life of the party. Like my family says, I'm like the life of the house. But I will tell you, a lot of successful, incredibly talented salespeople are not extroverts. They're introverts.
Yeah.
You don't have to be this bubbly personality to be great at sales. Once again, back to what Shantae is saying is like, you have to know your client's business better than they do. You have to be intellectually curious. You've got to be able to create a point of view of how Salesforce's technology can solve their business problems. That doesn't necessarily mean you have to be the life of the party to do that. So I would say 60% of the people that are in sales are probably not the life of the party. They probably don't like going to parties and mingling. They probably would rather be at home. So I think it's a misconception that salespeople are these extroverted people. I think sales is about being a business consultant and helping clients solve problems.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I actually don't have anything to add because that was exactly what I was going to say. I'll take the second part.
I have a question. Shantae, are you an extrovert or introvert? Which one?
I'm an ambivert. I'm both. It depends on what I'm doing and my mood. I'm also a Gemini, so I don't know if that tells enough of a story, but just getting to the second part of the question, some of the common weekly tasks, we're always looking for projects, business to get closer to our customers, right? Where can we drive value? Where can we deepen relationships? So I'd say the common weekly tasks and things that we are doing on a weekly basis, we are we're continuing to maintain the relationships that we're building. I have a mantra with my team around, hey, what step did we take today to move this deal forward? And if we don't have a deal, then what step have we taken to try to talk to somebody new? So we're very much looking at what we would call activities, right? And making sure that we are talking to as many people as we possibly can. Also splitting the time with what Reggie was referencing, and that's continuing to learn about our customers. So maybe that's in a conversation, but maybe we're doing some research for a call. Forecasting, if you're in sales, you're going to do it once a week. We're looking at it. We are pretty consistent. Actually, in this week, since it is the end of our fiscal year, we're almost forecasting on the hour, to be honest with you. I am on tracker calls all the time. And then I'd say there's an element of continued internal learning as well. We will continue to do enablements. We have team meetings where the solution engineering team will come in and present about maybe products that we're not talking about as much, or that we don't have a ton of insight into some of the new products that we're able to provide. So I would say that that's generally what we're doing. We're making sure we're talking to customers, we're moving our deals forward, we're forecasting accurately, and we're having a ton of fun doing it, I would say.
So our next question is, what does the career trajectory look like for an entry-level sales professional?
I'll give you an example. The gentleman that runs our entire commercial business for North America, his name is Warren Wick. He started off as a entry-level business development rep 15 years ago. So one of the things that Salesforce does a phenomenal job is from promoting from within. So if you start off as an entry-level AE and you're a hustler, you have all the traits that Shante and I have been talking about. You're great at, you obviously got to perform and put excellent results on the board. But if you're vocal about what you want to do and what you want to accomplish, you can go from an entry-level sales rep to running a big business at Salesforce. Shante is a great example. I started off as a first-line sales leader. So there are so many examples of how Salesforce promotes from within and cultivates talent.
So often at Black Enterprise, when we talk about career advancement, which is what we're talking about now, we talk about the importance of a sponsor. And we have a question about what is the best way to identify and acquire a potential sponsor.
You want to take that, Shante?
Yeah. So for me, I'm kind of like this with friends in my personal life as well. But I take notice of the people who gravitate towards me as well. I do things like this and have the opportunity to like talk to broad audiences, talk to a bunch of people. And sometimes out of that comes somebody who says, hey, you know, like that was great. Or I go and ask for some feedback. I would say the primary way that I've identified people that I'd like to align with is first and foremost, understanding if they're a person who is in a role that I might want to do. And then I straight up ask them for time. Reggie mentioned Warren Wick. I did that I was in our Atlanta office one time. He like came out to grab a glass of water and I just went up and introduced myself. And I don't really see any harm in that. I would say the other thing is you want to align yourself with people that I think share your values as well, right? These are people that you want to model, people that you want to be like. So identifying people that represent the values that you want to exude, and also are in the roles that you have. I think that, you know, that's how I look for mentors generally.
Yeah, and the only thing I'll add to that, and I can give you a personal example of the role that I'm in. The role that I'm starting next year was a promotion, and it was through a sponsor. But what I will tell you is sponsors are, the way I define it, a sponsor is someone in an influential position that has the ability to get you exposure, help you get bigger roles, help you get exposure to bigger projects. And they are the person that's advocating for you when you're not in the room. And they're putting their reputation on the line. So there are expectations from a sponsor. The sponsor expects that you deliver exceptional results and that you deliver on the commitments that you make to them, because they're putting their reputation on the line. There's a gentleman, phenomenal leader. His name is Larry Schertz at Salesforce. And he runs all of our enterprise business in North America. And earlier this year, I knew I wanted to make a career transition in his organization. So I just reached out to him, got time on his calendar, walked him through what I bring to the table, walked him through my performance. And we just had a monthly cadence. And because I performed, because I had a great reputation, because I was a hustler, when an opportunity became available, I got an opportunity to interview it and I was successful. But if I hadn't sought out that relationship, I didn't have the results, I didn't have the reputation, the brand, and the hustle, I probably wouldn't have got this opportunity. So I would encourage you to seek people in influential positions that are in a position to help you, but you got to have your A game on at all times. You have to deliver exceptional results, because they're not going to put their reputation on the line if you're not up to the task.
So apparently my ears weren't the only ones that perked up when you said corporate swag, because we got a question, Reggie, about how do you develop the corporate swag that you talked about?
First thing is, I would say you need to make sure that you work for a company or work for a business that you can bring your authentic self to work. And Salesforce is a company that I feel I can be myself, whether I'm at home, whether I'm with my boys, or whether I'm at work. So that's number one. Number two is corporate swag to me is how you carry yourself, your appearance, how you dress, how you handle your business, how you perform, the relationships you build, the impact that you make, not only on the job, but the impact you make in society, your reputation, your brand. It's a combination of all those things. I do a lot of reading. I do a lot of studying. I fill my mental repository with a lot of things that when I have conversations, I'm an interesting person. People would love to talk to me. I'm not bragging. I'm just saying that these are some things that kind of make up your swag and your personality. So I think everybody knows what swag is, but I think the most important thing about swag is make sure you are in an environment where you can be yourself, where you don't have to put on a mask. Because when you put on a mask, you're not being yourself and your swag's never going to come out.
Shante, I'm dying to hear what you have to say about this, because this is like the thread really for me for today between Bozoma earlier and now about really being authentic, and you can't have any swag if you're not being yourself.
That is absolutely it. First and foremost, I'm so glad I actually got to hear Reggie define it, because I've heard that term from him for like the last 3 years. So I'm glad I got a definition. Great question, whoever answered that or whoever asked that. But that's exactly what it is, right? It's unapologetically being yourself. And I would echo Reggie I actually started from the Salesforce corporate office in San Francisco. I was living in the Bay Area at the time. And then I moved to New York, and I had a role for a while where I was covering the entire US, including Canada. So I'd basically gotten to go to every Salesforce office. And I was able to be my authentic self in each and every one of those spaces. I always felt comfortable. And I think that is really what's kept me here. I don't feel that I need to change the way that I dress, the way that in fact, like that was a big change for me. I came from medical device, which is a little, when you're not in scrubs, it's a little more buttoned up. And like, I mean, I had to go shopping and actually get like sweaters and jeans because I didn't have anything. So the ability to be myself, not only outwardly, not only the way that I dress and the way that I carried myself, but also just with people. It was really easy to connect with people. I've met some of my best friends in the past few years at Salesforce, and that's because I've been given the freedom to be who I am.
So we've all been living in a different world for almost the past year now, and we have a really relevant question about how are you navigating being in sales in a virtual world, and especially for new businesses where you're trying to bring in as a new client without a couple of an existing relationship.
Shante, you want to take a first stab at it?
Sure. Yeah. Look, I'm not going to sugarcoat the fact that it's been challenging. There are 2 people on my 8-person team that I've never met in person, and that's just internal. So I think it's been very challenging internally. And I also quite honestly feel that I connect much better with people in person from a relationship building standpoint. So not being able to be in the same room as customers, I think has been pretty challenging. However, this is what we do. We pivot and we figure it out. And so when we used to have go-to meetings, we used to always turn the camera off. And I remember when a customer would turn the camera off, we'd be like, oh gosh, what's going on? Now it's the opposite. Now if someone's camera is off, we're like, hey, what's going on? You okay? So we have actually been able to successfully onboard new business. And that is primarily by calling people up and listening. Like, we're not going through this alone. Our customers are going through the same thing, both personally and professionally. Where we can't meet, now we have to make a concerted effort to find kind of some of those common threads. So that might mean more touch points, but I think we've still been able to accomplish or have similar results. I know some teams are thriving, some are having more challenges than others, but we've still been able to reach customers and align on that level playing field. Reggie, how about you?
The only thing I'll add to that, Lisa, to me, it's pretty simple. It's number one, every conversation you have with the client, turn on your camera.
Yeah.
You gotta look eye to eye to people and make sure that they're engaging with you, because if they turn the camera off, they're probably multitasking. So that is the number one priority for me, is make sure you turn your camera on. And then when I'm interacting with, I have a nationwide team. So when I'm interacting with my team, it's always camera on. It's sometimes it can be draining, but you gotta have that personal eye to eye connection. And then the second thing is, I think we've done a great job. Our marketing team has done a great job with coming up with creative events, wine tastings. I know people get burned out with the Zoom wine tastings, but wine tastings, doing dinners virtually, that kind of stuff really does help. So I know it can be a little draining, but in my humble opinion, using the technology, turning on those cameras and having face-to-face conversations is critical to being successful in this virtual world.
Yeah.
I want to thank all of the people who submitted questions. Those were really great questions. But while we have Reggie and Shantae, I want to make sure that we get the inside scoop from them with their top tips for the interview process at Salesforce.
You want to go first, Shantae?
Sure. I'm going to keep mine kind of general, because this is where I actually think that people have the most impact. And that's just do your research and do your homework. Like, we have the internet and there's so much information available. Not only information about Salesforce as a company and our values, which you should absolutely make sure that you review. It is the foundational building block of our company, or building blocks, I should say, of our company. Understand what we're about, and make a personal connection to that. I always appreciate that when people do. And also, LinkedIn is your friend. Reggie said it earlier. I will offer it. There is not an executive at this company that has ever turned me down for a one-on-one conversation ever. And I always have been of the mindset that we help. So go on LinkedIn, find people, again, who are doing what you want to be doing, and connect with them. That's how I got in. I understood how Salesforce sold. I understood how to run a meeting at Salesforce. I did that exact thing in my interview and ended up getting some really good feedback. So research, do your homework, learn as much as you can. Treat it like a sales call, right? Do your research, come prepared. We're a customer, right? You want us to buy your skills, sell yourself, and do all the research necessary to show us how you align.
The only thing I'll add, just from a tactical standpoint, if you would like to work for Salesforce, I'm going to give you a couple of tips. Number one, there's 2 books that you can read that our CEO, Mark Benioff, who's a phenomenal leader, wrote a book called Behind the Cloud, which is like a history lesson of how Salesforce became to be Salesforce. And the second book came out 2 years ago, keep me honest, Shantae, maybe last year. It's called Trailblazer. And it talks about how Salesforce is really making an impact on the world itself and giving back. But it also provides insight into how the company works in the history. So I would read those 2 books. I would go listen to our earnings call. I would go listen to our virtual Dreamforce, our keynote by Brett Taylor, who's our incredible COO, and Mark Benioff talks about kind of where Salesforce is going. And then back to Shantae's point, when you're talking to recruiters, ask. We have this program, it's called the Insiders Program, and I'm part of it, where you can talk to a Salesforce leader or a Salesforce account executive, and they can help you prep for your interview. So ask them, can I talk to a Salesforce account executive that can help me prep for my interview, help me prep for my presentation, and reach out to me. I'm happy to connect you with people at Salesforce that can also help you as well.
So that transition to next steps, because if there are people watching today who are interested, what are the next steps for them?
Number one is go out and start looking at the jobs that are available. And once again, if you don't know someone at Salesforce, if you know someone at Salesforce, make sure you get their email address and put them down as your internal referral source. Because what happens is your application will route to them and they can endorse your application. It goes right to the recruiter. So I would encourage you to do that. And then if you don't know anyone at Salesforce, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I can give you my email address. Obviously, I'm going to look at your LinkedIn profile and make sure that looks tight before I endorse your application. But I'm happy to endorse you, which will get you right to a recruiter. And you can at least have an exploratory conversation. So my number one step is go look at the jobs. We are hiring. We're a fast growing company. We're looking for diverse talent, and we'd love to have some conversations with folks out there that are interested in joining us.
Yep.
Okay. We've heard so much today about the opportunities that are available in tech, and we've seen 3 real life examples of executives who are leveraging those opportunities to achieve their own success. I'd like to again thank Bozoma St. John and Reggie Marble and Shantae Baker for sharing their experiences and their advice with us. And a huge thanks to Salesforce for demonstrating its commitment to our community through this event and our partnership. But mostly, I would encourage all of you out there to take advantage of the resources that have been shared with you today and to truly consider if your next big corporate move might just involve a pivot to tech sales. Thank you and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Elisa.
Thanks, Elisa.